Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, July 24th, 2023. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins. Here. Mr. Brado. Here. Mr. Olgiati.
Here.
Mrs. Rose.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkowski.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting minutes of July 10th, 2023, approval of the workshop minutes of July 17th, 2023, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,277,479.32, excuse me, and approval of the June 2023 revenue and expenditure report. Is there discussion or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Olgiati to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, you may recall actually, I believe when we approved the sidewalk work, I did say that we were waiting for some information on the construction engineering. I did get that Thursday, just after the board packet went out. I did email that to everybody. So I would propose that we add item E7, the construction engineering proposal from Wade Trim. Otherwise, I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda with one addition.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented. Add an item E7, construction engineering services for sidewalk project.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, I've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Badkins. Discussion, Board. Hearing none, seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is announcements. I do have a few brief announcements. You will find on the township website information about proper sandbag disposal. We were specifically notified by Eagle that all sandbags should be removed from the 2019 and 2020 floods. The township website does have information. We also posted the formal press release from Eagle. I think a primary goal of their message was that they don't want folks to slash the sandbags and dump them in the canal. So we certainly don't want to do that. We do have a disposal site where the sandbags can be transferred, so there's information on the website for, and then I think there is a concern because over time those sandbags do deteriorate with ultraviolet and whatnot, and again, that we don't want to lead to, not necessarily polluting, but dumping into our waterways. This week, Thursday, July 27th, we encourage you to join us for a free concert at Waterfront Park. This month, we will be featuring the sounds of the Blue Cat Band from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Thanks to our Parks and Rec Committee for organizing that and all the sponsors that have helped to cover the costs. We are working on updating and refreshing the township website over the next few months. If you have photos of our beautiful township that you'd like to offer as possible backgrounds for the site, please send them to our Deputy Supervisor, Stephanie. Her email is smittelstedt, SMITTELSTEDT, at harrisontownshipmi.gov. You can also call on that at the supervisor's office for that or other events. Call 586-466-1445. Our website, www.harrisontownshipmi.gov, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at HarrisonTWPMI. Any other board announcements?
Beautification hosted their garden walk on Saturday. I know my wife and my mother-in-law went and said it was another great event. It was always both encouraging and a little frustrating when you see how nice other people's yards look. You really come home and keeping up with the Joneses at that point, but it's a really nice event that they put on. If you get the chance, do it. And while they were doing gardening, I was here in this room here, and there was a giant boa constrictor laying across this desk. They did not find it at the Reptarium event that the library was hosting, so it might still be around. No, but they did lay a boa constrictor across our desk here, so again, a lot of great events here in the township.
Yeah, yeah. That was a library event.
Library
event,
event,
yeah. Okay, good. Any other announcements?
Can you just give more specific, I'm on the website now, and I'm not finding where it has that sandbag information. Because I know there's some on my street, and I'd love to be able to point the residents in the right spot.
You know, offhand, I really couldn't tell you. It's all news. It's usually,
Maybe it's under resources.
must be.
I thought I saw it under resources.
Let's see.
Let's see it, but we can make sure it gets emailed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not certain.
I saw it the other day.
Yeah, I didn't look at it, but I don't know offhand.
Okay,
Let me find that out, and I'll pass it on.
sounds great, thank you.
All right, any other announcements? Hearing none, Mrs. Zinner, would you like to speak? We have our county commissioner, Mrs. Zinner, give us an update on Macomb County.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just want to let you know that the intake center is finally passed. It's gone through all the different meetings, and we passed it full board last Thursday. $228,791,377. I've gone through this a lot. I know people, the citizens watching probably know a lot about it. I just want to explain how the money is going to be used. Immediately, that's what the executive hackle asked for. And what we had commissioners for finance, the chair and vice chair, and everybody worked together with this, but they came up with an idea that I thought was real good. What we suggested, and worked out well, was they received immediately $129,758,815. And what for the next 5 years, they will receive $5 million for 5 years. So the rest of the money is in a line item, and as they need it, they can come and get it. They'll present what their needs are, because they don't need all the money at one time. This way it'll accrue value, and as they need it, they can come and explain what they need, of course, and send that line item for them. And it was a little unusual for that kind of a project, but it's going to be over several years. So we felt it was best as commissioners. There were 2 that didn't vote for it for 2 different reasons. Most of us felt that was good. It would be good for the citizens, good for everything, and hopefully make some money while we're waiting, and it should work out for everybody, our thought. Executive Hackle came to the full board meeting, and he was very thankful. It all worked out well, and he was really thankful for all of us. And at the end, Commissioner Brown said, well, really, it was everybody that worked together. They had the foresight, they did the planning, and we, it's everybody working together. It's really for the citizens that need it. It's for the people who have to use that facility, and hopefully the help that they're going to get from that will eliminate a lot of that use. And also the police agencies, because a lot of them, they don't keep them in their facilities. They come to the jail. A lot of citizens may not be aware of that, so that's a lot of less money for those areas. I mean, you know that. St. Clair Shores knows that, and other agencies. But just all around, I think it's going to be much better for everyone, and especially our citizens and everybody all around. So I think that was a wise way to use that money, and will be used wisely. Last meeting, the supervisor brought up Linda, and I don't know if I can say her last name.
Karczewski?
Thank you, Karczewski. And I wish I would have remembered to say that when I came up at a public time. She really was a special person, and there are people like Linda that help every single person that they come across that has needs, if they don't even have needs that they know about. And she really was a very special person and will probably stay well remembered in this community for decades. She was really a great person. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you, Mr. Sir.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on our agenda to item D1 from the Water and Sewer Department. That's on page 66 if you're zooming along on the electronic version here. So, board members, as you're aware, we did recently host a workshop to discuss our current water meter reading system and the need to invest in a replacement system. Our current system dates back to 2010. The sending units were expected to last 10 years with prorated support for an additional 10 years. We have seen premature failures in the system, and the original supplier has been sold to another company. Service from the new owner has suffered. Supply of replacement units has been delayed, and support is very poor. Annual fees for support have also increased significantly. We believe it is time to invest in a new system. Multiple employees in our water and sewer department have been working on investigating suppliers and products and soliciting and analyzing proposals. We explored the option of upgrading to ultrasonic metering and looked at ways of improving individual customer interfaces. We discussed 3 proposals in our workshop, and the recommendation from our workshop was to select Master Meter, working as this ultimate product supplier, working through the supplier, Core and Main, to implement our new water reading system. They have the lowest cost to own and operate over a 10-year period. Their products come with several new features that will reduce fraud and help identify leaks and high consumption issues. As an example, Master Meter's hardware and software offers an app that monitors usage with a snowbird setting where you can be alerted if there is any consumption while your home is unoccupied. We anticipate this system will have a lifespan of 30 years, although during that time individual sending units will need to be replaced. We also discussed the cost and timing to have the subcontractors that work through Core and Main to assist with the in-home installation of the new sending units. Their proposal would result in a total replacement of the system in less than 1 year. Attached in the board packet is the presentation from our workshop. There were a few assumptions that were given to the suppliers in order to assure that each proposal was comparable. The actual implementation of the new system will undoubtedly have minor changes that will alter the final cost, so it is difficult to pinpoint that cost at this time. Core and Main has provided unit costs and has committed to holding the costs in their proposals, but the quantities may change based on what is encountered in the field. The estimated installation cost of this new meter reading system is $3.1 million, and the annual cost for support is $20,324. We discussed multiple ways to pay for the new system. The final decision will be influenced by multiple factors, including grant applications as well as bonding options. The first steps in implementing the new system will involve building out the reading infrastructure, which comes at no initial cost. We discussed how the supplier waives that cost. Obviously, we know that's built into the total cost of the system, but there is no upfront cost to implement the infrastructure. The actual installation of the reading sending units will follow this infrastructure, so it's fair to estimate we probably have about 90 days before we're going to see any invoices, because the primary cost is going to come with the purchase of the actual sending units. I recommend that we select Core and Main to replace our current water meter reading system utilizing Master Meter equipment at an approximate installation cost of $3.1 million and an annual support cost of $20,324, and to direct the 3 full-time officials to investigate payment and financing options with a recommendation to come back at a later date. And again, we had, I think our workshop was in excess of 3 hours last Monday. talking about the various features, anti-tamper features, so forth. The ultrasonic option versus, sticking with the standard brass meters, maybe the potential, and this proposal does include an upgrade on some of the larger meters where we have much more variation in flows to eliminate the compound meters throughout our system. So we do look at some of those larger customers going to ultrasonic metering as well as then built-in sending units with those. So discussion, concerns, I know there were some concerns about, we've had some correspondence regarding concerns about the legal documentation and that sort of thing. This is kind of this is a pretty big project for us in terms of, how to implement it. We also I didn't include in the board packet, but we did discuss how we are currently seeing failures and we can't get the sending units for our existing system, so we're having increasingly more and more manual reads or estimated reads, and that compounds problems because there is additional labor and, an estimate isn't always accurate, so by the time we do get a chance to enter the home, sometimes that estimate was low and people have a larger bill. Sometimes we overestimated and people have a credit. So there is a sense of urgency in trying to resolve what's right now a failing system. So is there discussion, questions, or a motion?
I just wanted to touch base on the terms and conditions that we talked about at the workshop. It was actually their corporate terms and conditions, the service agreement. We went through it. It calmed me down quite a bit. It's written completely different. So it was, they had referenced it. I looked them up online, and when I think Dave, you sent that out
This afternoon.
yeah, and it matched the one that came out a little bit earlier, so yeah, I'm good with what we talked about on Monday.
Make a motion to select Core and Main to replace our current water meter reading system utilizing master meter equipment at approximate installation cost $3.1 million and annual support cost of $20,324, and to direct 3 full-time officials to investigate payment and financing options with the recommendation to come back at a later date.
Is there support?
I'll support that.
Okay. Further discussion, board.
Just to clarify, what's the total number?
Well, we just
Like meter quantities?
Yes.
Boy, and
have
what's
it all
tricky,
here, but it's
it's in the-
9,000. Yeah.
yeah,
Roughly
it's-
9,700? Okay.
yeah, I think,
I think all our math is based off of like 9,800, I think, just
Yes.
for rounding
Yeah.
sake, but we're on
Yes.
by a few.
yeah, and keep in mind that when we talk about what that total number is, that total number is a combination of,
Compounded and residential.
yeah, so there's,
Commercial, residential, yeah.
right, there's a certain quantity of meters that are at 5/8, 3/4, going all the way up. I think that information was all included in the appendix, which I didn't include in the board package,
No,
but it
I
was
think we had
slightly
that
underneath.
information last week.
Yeah,
I just
it's in
have
the
forgotten the
appendix.
number, because I ran, that's approximately 200 a week they have to install, because it says it's a 1-year duration. I would like to make sure that is part of the agreement, because we
The
don't
ti-
want
the
this
time.
dragging out for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
And I know they're gonna have the one-offs that we talked about, there's
Yeah.
gonna be but
there
the
is-
majority of
There's
them.
some spots in the contract that went out about completion dates and that kind of stuff to put
Yes.
in there, so we'll work with water and sewer to make
Yeah,
sure those get.
I know you will, I just know it's a big
Oh, yeah.
haul. It's a
Well,
real
and
big
if
haul.
you recall, at the workshop, Mike Phillips from Master Meter was actually, communicating with his team, and he said that they're adding additional installation crews. He was estimating 5 to 7. He said on a 5 to 7 months. He said 8 months at the latest, but the language states a year, and so we would be extremely happy if it were done in 1 year.
Yep.
Yeah,
We
it's-
just do not want the situation we've had for the last, 13 years.
No, understood.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is, one thing that might come as I don't know, some reassurance for you, if they don't install a meter and sell us a meter, they don't have anything to invoice. It isn't less like they're saying, listen, we're gonna charge you $2 million up front and then $10 a meter. We're charging you $0 up front and we're billing as we install. So, and he said they have the supply of meters. So, I mean, I guess from a capitalistic standpoint, we kind of have the advantage there, right? I mean, we would assume they would want to fulfill this contract as soon as possible, because that's the sooner they get the invoice for the total scope of the work.
So just from, it sounds like this is an out and in, it's a pretty simple change out?
It is. We give them access to our curb stop, so they will not touch anyone's plumbing inside the home. So we will avoid all of that at all consequences, at all costs, to avoid, negative consequences. But the issue becomes, there are very few, and I say very few, out of all of the homes in the township, we may have 10 or so that we do not know the exact location, or may not have, recently located that curb stop. But if that's the case, then we take a look at the inside plumbing, or they have the ability to come in and freeze things to stop, so that we do not disturb indoor plumbing. That's
For the,
one of the.
for the most part, they're not touching plumbing at all. They're just screwing a cap off, putting a new one on and turning it on.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's a meter replacement, then it becomes turn it off at the curb stop, undo just the meter tails, do not touch the valves or plumbing, put it back in, and every meter, this is another important part, and I want to say this on camera to all of you, because Justin will be taking over, but our ordinance states these meters are sealed, and they're sealed with a copper wire and a lead seal, and the reason we do that is for tampering and negative results for all parties involved. And so, and I brought this up at the workshop, just as with the building department, and someone has a hot water tank blow on a Saturday afternoon and we're not open, they have every right to get that hot water tank replaced, but then they do need to contact us at their earliest convenience and say, oh, excuse me, Harrison Township, my hot water tank blew, I need a permit, and then we do an after-the-fact inspection. The exact same situation applies here. If for any reason that resident needs to cut that seal wire because they have some sort of plumbing issue, whether it be an incoming or outgoing valve, we need to know about that, because if we go in after the fact and that wire is cut, they are getting the ordinance violation against them. And we have to hold strong in this, because we have had so many situations in the past where we have not been able to hold to our guns with that, and it causes great grief. I mean, we spoke in the workshop about a few occurrences where people have literally been trying to cheat us by taking the register off and setting it on the floor. Well, they had to cut the seal wire to do that, and then they set it on the floor. Sometimes they made the mistake and we actually went in there and saw the register on the floor. Other times the seal wire was cut. But these are very important when these ordinances are reiterated with this program. We need to hold to our guns and follow these. And I'm asking for your support in advance, because these could become, and I hope they don't. I sincerely hope our residents are listening, and just please don't do that. We bill accordingly, and you get billed for only what you use.
That's right. Well, understood. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board.
Mr. Supervisor, if I may say just one more thing on camera, I would like to publicly thank Alex Thomas for all of her hard work putting this together. She worked countless hours on this. I mean, Alex is a very, very intelligent young lady, and very good at what she does, and she put a lot of extra effort forward here for us to have this information in front of us, and changed it as many times as we asked and as many times as were required. And sometimes she may not have always had that beautiful smile on her face, but she did it, and she did a fantastic job, and I want to publicly thank her for that. So thank you very much, Alex.
Yep, I agree, and, if you say this is something you only do once every 12, 15 years, this is obviously an above and beyond thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Not something you do regularly, so there was a lot of work, and I think we're all very appreciative. Thank you for recognizing that. All right, next on our agenda, item E1 from the Supervisor's Office regarding a part-time grounds and maintenance worker. Board members, we are currently short one Parks and Grounds maintenance worker. Mr. Mark Harder is a township resident and has helped our grounds crew in the past. I am recommending that we hire Mr. Mark Harder as a part-time grounds and maintenance worker at a rate of $17.16 per hour per our policy.
I'll make that motion.
Sorry, what's the correct rate?
$17.86.
I think you said 7:16.
I'm sorry, maybe I did. $17.86 is the rate.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there support?
Support.
All right. Discussion?
Well, I notice, he's, got a law degree.
He's retired.
Oh, you think we can get him to do legal work for $17.80 an hour? I'm kidding.
Maybe you can, Rob's got some work for him too.
Yeah. I think Rob will raise it to 19.
I think you get what you pay for though, right, Rob?
I worked 5 years in grounds for Warren Schools, so maybe we can switch.
There you go. That's good. All right, next on our agenda,
did not
oh,
vote
I'm
on that,
sorry,
sir.
threw me off there. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board, and thank you, Mr. Witt. Next, item E2, Public Services Director position. We recently received notice of retirement from our Public Services Director, Mr. David Axtell. Mr. Axtell has served our community in an exemplary manner, and he will be missed. His last day of service will be August 10th. I asked for authorization to interview for his position at our last board meeting. We have a long history of promotion from within for this position. The Water and Sewer Department falls under this position, and the historical knowledge of our system is very valuable. Mr. Justin Murphy is our current Water and Sewer Maintenance Supervisor, and he has been in that role since 2011. He has almost 20 years' experience with Harrison Township, and he meets all of the requirements of the Public Services Director position. The 3 full-time officials interviewed Mr. Murphy, and we believe that he would be the best choice for our next Public Services Director. Therefore, I am recommending that we promote Mr. Justin Murphy to the position of Public Services Director at a starting salary of $97,108.46, effective August 11th, 2023.
I'll make the motion to promote Mr. Murphy to the position of Public Services Director at a starting salary of $97,108.46, effective August 11th, 2023.
So support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Rose. In terms of a discussion, just as a point of clarification, although this isn't always the case, in most cases, if you have a, maybe sort of say a management structure, if you have a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3, this is the 1 retiring, the 2 stepping up to 1, and, we'll talk about what we do for number 2, but this isn't a radical departure. This is kind of something that has happened in the past, and we believe is the best option at this time. But just a point of clarification. Any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, we've got a motion, and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mrs. Rose. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next item.
Congratulations, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. Next on the agenda, item E3 regarding our, what we anticipated would be a now vacated maintenance supervisor position. The anticipated approval of the promotion of Mr. Justin Murphy creates a vacancy in his current position. We have a long history of promoting from within the Water and Sewer Department. Mr. Jeffrey Ryan is our current Water and Sewer Foreman. He has been in that leadership role since 2014. He has almost 20 years' experience with Harrison Township and meets all the requirements of the Water and Sewer Maintenance Supervisor position. The 3 full-time officials interviewed Mr. Ryan. We believe that he would be the best choice for our Water and Sewer Maintenance Supervisor. I am recommending that we promote Mr. Jeffrey Ryan to the position of Water and Sewer Maintenance Supervisor effective August 11th, 2023. Mr. Ryan is currently at level 4 in his position with a salary of $81,252.06. The lowest level in the Water and Sewer Maintenance Supervisor position that would not require a pay cut is level 3 with a salary of $83,710.20. Therefore, I recommend that we promote Mr. Jeffrey Ryan to the position of Water and Sewer maintenance supervisor at the level 3 salary of $83,710.20, effective August 11th, 2023. And I guess I would point out that both of these positions are in the supervisory contract, where I think there's a total of 4 members of that bargaining unit, because it's kind of difficult to have a supervisor and somebody that's, could be taking direction in the same bargaining unit. But because they are in a supervisory role, we have a pretty broad language, so where we might say, if a clerical position opens up and maybe there's, 4 or 5 employees that are eligible, we have a more formal process where we post it, people can apply for it. In this case, there really isn't another person within that bargaining unit that would, building official doesn't have the qualifications to move over. So this kind of bumping process, again, has been done in the past, and it's kind of a logical progression that we've seen in the past. So it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes people aren't interested or experience, doesn't apply. In this case, I think this is something, I don't really believe when we put out this agenda item that any employee was surprised by this or didn't anticipate that this might be what would happen. So, any discussion, or is there a motion?
Make a motion to promote Jeffrey Ryan to the position of water and sewer maintenance supervisor at the level 3 salary of $83,710.20, effective August 11th, 2023.
Is there support?
Support.
A motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Olgiati. Any questions or discussion, board members?
This is succession planning done right.
I think so.
It's nice to have people to step into these roles.
Absolutely. All right. Hearing no further discussion and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next, item E4, the anticipated approval of the promotion of Mr. Jeffrey Ryan creates a vacancy in his position. That's kind of the end of the line within this bargaining unit. So if you lose the guy at the top and you bump the guy at the bottom, you have an opening at the lower end. We have multiple internal candidates that are qualified to fill this position, although the contract does not require that we fill the position with an internal candidate. Again, though, historically, because of that system knowledge, I think we talked about this before, a building official or a building inspector, for example, if I'm inspecting construction in Clinton Township, I don't really anticipate that if I went to Macomb Township or Harrison Township that I'd encounter anything, radically different. But within the water and sewer system, it is an existing kind of, you get to know where things are in the community, and when something happens, maybe with the water mains, that history and the understanding of the underground infrastructure does pay dividends, and so we do hope to see internal candidates. But at this point, I'm requesting permission to post, advertise, an interview for the position of water and sewer foreman with a recommendation to come back before the board at a future meeting.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Is that Mr. Batkins? Okay.
So who does the interviewing for that?
It-
These
we-
guys do that?
Yep, so historically, we've tried to have the 3 full-time officials sit on we kind of run that. But depending on whatever department it is, we'd like to have the department heads in. So if it was, say, for example, if we were interviewing someone for the accounting office, we feel it's important that, say, Nikki in that case would be a part of that interview process and have her chance. Sometimes there's a clear leader. Sometimes you say, boy, I could go with candidate A or candidate B. I didn't like candidate C. And you kind of look to that leader to say, this is the person,
Right.
they're gonna be answering to you. So we definitely include, I would anticipate that this would include, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Ryan, as well as the 3 full-timers. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item E5 regarding an outdoor shed. Board members, our grounds and maintenance department has utilized a van in the past, as well as the basement of the boardroom for storage for many years. The van has been sold, and there is not sufficient and appropriate space in the basement for storing all of the equipment that we need. We investigated multiple suppliers and looked at other options before agreeing on a prefabricated shed. Backyard Living Company is a Macomb County company that supplies exactly what we are looking for. We discussed various sizes and locations and would like to order a 10-foot by 12-foot wood-sided shed with a roll-up overhead door. The total cost for the shed with delivery is $190. We also considered what we would do if we either renovate our current buildings or relocate the campus. This shed is kind of a prefabricated, movable product, so it can be relocated if we wanted to utilize it at another location. So for example, let's say we stay here, but we repurpose the buildings, maybe put an addition on, something like that, and we were able to incorporate some storage space into the work here. We could always relocate this to the waterfront park, or more likely over by the senior center, so that we'd have outdoor storage there. And it's also possible that it stays right where we put it, and we don't need to move it, but at least it's something that is constructed in a way that it can be moved. The total cost will include creating an asphalt base, but we can accomplish that with our staff, and the materials that we would need to do that asphalt base are far below the spending limit that we have. So it's important for this board to understand, if they do approve this shed, the total cost will be more than $5,190, but not a substantial amount more for the materials we need to construct the base for the shed. So based on that, I recommend that we purchase a wood-sided 10-foot by 12-foot outdoor shed from Backyard Living Company at a cost of $5,190.
Where's the shed gonna be located at?
We're looking at, the proposal at this point would be, I guess, behind the engineering building, in such a manner that, right now, say if you're coming down Town Hall and you could make a right turn to be on the parking lot that's between the library and the engineering building, it would be on your right there. So we'd take one parking spot that's furthest from, kind of far away from the door, cross that off, place it on the grass, well, on an asphalt pad where there's currently grass. That would give them the ability to back up in case, you're unloading things, things like that. And overhead door, we think, is a little more durable, longer lasting, that kind of a thing. Any other discussion, or is there a motion?
The total on that, I'm sorry, it was $51.90?
Yeah, so what had happened, we'd looked at a couple different iterations. I'll let the board know. Initially, we had a preference for a particular style of shed that was metal-sided. And with as kind of, looking at it, and different options, almost kind of like looks a little more like a pole barn. We thought that might even be a little lighter in case we did have to move it, but the difficulty there is, when we looked into it, well, there's some ordinance limitations on what is allowed in a residential district. Commercial has some freedoms, if you will, of what you can do with certain outdoor structures. So we went back and forth, looked at a couple different options, and the last proposal from the sales lady, she inadvertently included the sales tax. So the proposal shows a number that's a little larger because she had included sales tax. We don't have to pay that. So we can submit the documentation, so.
I guess I was just running the numbers real quick based off of the $46.90 minus the $150 plus the $650 plus delivery is $54.90.
No.
So just point of,
Yeah, let's take a look. Yeah, I agree with you. It is $54.90. So that price as it carries down does not include the delivery. So I'm glad you saw that. So and we did look at whether or not we would have an option to move that ourselves or have them deliver it. So I have confidence in our crew to be able to move it. The reality is if we mess it up, it's like, it's not a massive savings, so So I guess, based on that, I'm glad you caught that. I did not see that. So we would be looking at a total cost of $54.90.
And just one other point of emphasis is the 25% down, and then they want the balance before they deliver. Is that typical?
What that refers to is these are, the overhead door is not their typical model. We talked about whether we would have double doors or overhead doors, and we just felt for durability and be able to back up a truck to it. You know, kind of, again, going back to the maintenance guys, you know, what would you prefer? And so I think because of that, this is something we have to order. They build to order, so they want a down payment so that if you say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't want it, you know, you can't walk away from it. Yeah. So that, I believe that's kind of one of the, so this is a, like I say, they're located in Richmond. This is one of those places where they build a certain quantity of them. You go in, I just want one. Hey, I like that color. They have them in stock. If you order them, I think they like to see a deposit, so.
All right, I'll make a recommendation to purchase a wood-decided 10 by 12 outdoor shed from Backyard Living Company at a cost of $54.90.
All right. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, good. And thank you for that catch. I know we'd be coming back talking about it in a couple of weeks, because you just kind of look it over and the numbers are good, and I missed that, so. All right, good. Any other discussion, questions?
Mr. Supervisor, just something for the board to keep in mind, in going from the metal to the wood, you will want to install gutters on that, like, almost immediately, because the rain will come off and hit halfway down that wall, and it's going to take that, just rot the T111. It's a very common practice, so just something to keep in mind.
Okay, well, that's good. And like I say, I know there's gonna be probably some things that we're gonna end up doing, you know, that are, you know, internal. But none of those, you know, so it's a given that, say, if we wanna make a, you know, like, we're gonna construct a ramp to go in there, different things like that. I'm sure once they get the shed, they'll probably put some shelves, things like that. But those are, from a cost perspective, you know, minimal cost, but that's an important point. Thank you, Mr. Axtell. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda regarding representation in the Tax Commission and Tax Tribunal. Our assessing department oversees the tax appeal process. It's kind of an interesting thing because sometimes we're arguing for the value of a property or for the classification of a property, and it really doesn't impact revenue on our side. But it's the responsibility that we have. Assessing department tries to do their best following state laws and directives on how to assess property. The Board of Review hears appeals each spring, but anyone who appeals their assessment has the option of taking their appeals to a higher level. This year, several cannabis growers have appealed their property classification, and they're making the claim that their operation should be classified as an agricultural property. And that isn't unique to Harrison Township. That's happened in several communities where cannabis growers are located. We have 6 appeals. There are others. So we have employed outside counsel in the past when we've had unique appeals. I'm thinking, again, if we're dealing with an individual, a homeowner, we handle those. We've had some commercial appeals, and Mr. Huth's firm has represented us. But when we have something like this, where there's probably some really unique case law about, should this be agricultural? Is this similar to a greenhouse? Does it make a difference if they process while they have a grow facility? It's really not an easy black and white one. Hallahan and Associates has successfully represented us in the past on some of the larger or more unique properties, and they are currently representing other municipalities with similar cases. It is our belief that by sharing a law firm, we can provide a quality defense while sharing and kind of keeping the costs a little bit lower. Research into case law, drafting arguments can be shared amongst those municipalities. Within the board packet, we have a proposal from Hallahan and Associates. The proposed hourly rate is $195 for attorneys and $100 per hour for clerks and assistants. And Ms. Hallahan has estimated a cost of $5,000 or less to represent us in this case. I recommend that we engage the services of Hallahan and Associates, PC, to represent us in defending multiple matters before the state Tax Commission and the Michigan Tax Tribunal at a total cost not to exceed $5,000.
So moved.
All right. For support. Support. Okay. Motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Tominello. Yeah, this gal, she's really good, and she's done good work for us before, and I think this makes sense.
And I just want to add too, that, we had not had this issue before. We do a lot of the tax work for the township, and we were just concerned, first time going through it, it's gonna run up a large bill. We checked with them. They've had the issue already and are looking at it, so I think it's gonna save you some money.
And initially, I kind of say like, this sort of frustrates me. The state has implemented this entire process, and other states have done this already. So, a lot of the legislation was drafted based on what things have happened in other states that got into the cannabis or legalization of cannabis before us. And I don't feel like we should have to argue this. I feel like the leadership of the state should say, these properties should be decided this way, because no one, in my opinion, is leading this to solve this problem. A number of growers on the private side and municipalities on the public side have to spend time in a legal process to argue it out, and, so I wish we were getting this solved for us, right?
It's going in the wrong direction. I'll say the circuit court in Kalamazoo last week ruled that this is agricultural, so.
And I can see that argument. I mean, I really have to say, I mean, it is, and the point is I'm sure there's case law, there's things that, that could help us to understand why someone might lean one way or another.
So what's the effect on the businesses? Like, how much would they save if they're classified as agricultural versus whatever they're now?
I think it's an impact on, it's primarily school taxes, right? So just like you and I, we pay a certain millage rate, but say, someone who might own a restaurant pays that millage rate plus the 18 mills because they don't get a homestead exemption. The ultimate argument of whether it's agricultural or commercial really decides whether or not they pay all, some, or none of that 18 mills. So, I mean, I don't know that I can say exactly. That's more than 50% of the bill. I don't think we're at 36 mills without homestead. So it's, in other words, if your property is valued at $2 million, you're still paying taxes on $2 million. You're just paying less millage on that $2 million.
Right.
So that's really where the question comes in. There is a potential impact on, I think if they're agricultural, it changes the threshold for personal property tax, yeah. But again, that's not I mean, I don't mean to imply that it isn't significant to the individual that pays it, but in terms of our overall taxable value township-wide, whether or not they pay personal property tax on the personal property they have is not a significant measurable hit to the township, so.
Just one more thing.
Yeah.
We're looking at it for another community that's putting forth their ordinance for the first time, and we haven't seen it before, but we put in there language that says, if you want a ability to grow or operate in our community, you give up the right to claim agricultural. I'm not sure it's gonna fly, we're trying to figure it out, but by the time this sorts its way through, we'll have an answer for you, and it may be worth amending our ordinance, because
Those are annual renewals, so you'd have
Yeah.
to agree next time you go through it, right?
And the argument really comes down to, and I can kind of see it both ways. If I had the ability to say, if I hire an attorney and I make a good argument, I can pay less taxes, well, I can understand that. I want to pay my fair share, but I don't want to pay, if you're agricultural and I'm agricultural, why should I pay more? The flip side of that is, to your point, when you translate to say, well, what would that difference in agriculture? Well, I'd just be paying more school tax. Well, what, right? So you could, you're almost sort of guilting in the growers to say, well, I'd love to be able to grow in your community. Well, okay, we'd really like you to support our school district and pay some school taxes,
you
so.
don't have a constitutional right to grow in our community.
Correct.
If you want
Right.
a license, then you gotta give up something.
Right.
It's reasonable to me.
And good or bad, we've certainly generated, I mean, one license is $5,000. Just one license 1 year, and we're seeing,
Yeah. and
dozens of them.
Regardless of it being a marijuana business, we have a duty, one of the core functions of townships and local government in general is assessing. You have assessing, tax collection, and elections. Those are the three big things. We have a duty to do this to represent our other stakeholders as well, even though the impact's not directly for us. Our job is to represent them.
And this entire process is kind of evolutionary. There are some well-established rules regarding the sales of liquor or the oversight of a restaurant. But there was a time, or frankly, automobiles, right? I mean, when we think about when automobiles were instituted, we were just having a conversation about e-bikes. You know, well, when I was a kid, there was no such thing as an e-bike. So as new things come along, sometimes case law forms laws, sometimes, you know, some community come up with a better way to regulate this, but regardless, this is something. Initially, I had met with representatives from a few of these businesses, and they said, we think we should be agricultural. I went back to the assessor, and I said, you know, how do you, well, she gave me a list of municipalities that have grow. They all treat these as commercial, so it's kind of hard to say, well, I'm just gonna do it this way. But she did voice her displeasure in the fact that the state isn't giving direction, right? To say, this is how we want you to do it, so I think this is the prudent thing to do. This is, I believe, the lowest cost way to have very good representation, and let a judge decide.
How have the results been with Hallahan and Associates on other municipalities they represented? Have they gotten any type of, maybe Mr. Huth can answer that question?
I don't know about others, but she's represented us before.
Yeah, no, they do, we bump across them in other communities, they do a good job. On this issue, they wouldn't have, there's nothing to report because it's brand new, so, I know they're working on, for Fraser and some other communities, same issue, so they should be able to spread the cost across all these communities.
But this kind of representation is really that firm's specialty.
That's what they do, yeah.
So, and again, we've worked with, I don't believe Mrs. Kopp has worked with her before, but Mrs. Ryan, when she was our assessor, worked with her, and I remember going through the process. I was a little more green then.
We've used them since.
Yeah, but, you know, again, good results, well represented in court, so on and so forth, well
Do
prepared.
you feel like the results of the circuit court judgment in Kalamazoo are gonna affect the rest of the state in terms of the direction that these cases are gonna be ruled?
Yeah, please, 'cause I would say I don't know.
It's circuit court, so it's not precedent binding, and there's kind of a feeling in the legal community anyway that the Kalamazoo decisions sometimes come a little bit out of left field. I'm not on record, am I?
Yeah, so that isn't necessarily
Yeah, it's not.
precedent binding
It is
type
not.
decision.
It's just one, I read the decision, it's one way it could go, but we'll have our own battle here.
So I hope you're not in court tomorrow in Kalamazoo.
Well, regardless of the outcome, I think, Mr. Huth, you mentioned something about possibly looking at our ordinance. Were we better off not participating in this and just changing our ordinance?
I don't think so. There's two things there. One is when someone, like, it'd be like me saying, I'm gonna sue you. You can't say, well, I'm just gonna ignore it. So once they take action, we've gotta engage. That's number one. Number two, I feel like if we don't go through the process, it's a little kind of weird to say, first and foremost, this case could be decided in our favor. I don't have to spend money on an ordinance. If it doesn't go the way we want to, we can look at those options, but I don't feel like, we're here for the long haul. That school's been there a long time. You and I went there. If they lose a year of tax, and again, if these guys are successful, it won't destroy the school as we know it. There's over 99.9% of their tax base is still gonna be intact. So I think it's better to say, like, this is something we need to monitor. We do need to respond because we're in court. We've got to take action. We've got to respond, but maybe we're successful and there's no need to make a change, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Tominello. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Item E7 is the additional item we added. As I said, it came just after the board packet was prepared, but I did email later that afternoon the proposal from Wade Trim. Board members, as you recall, 2 weeks ago at our July 10th meeting, we did vote to, award the sidewalk replacement project to Luigi Ferdinandi and Son Cement Company. And the estimated cost, well, I shouldn't say estimated, but the unit price cost was $82,972.42. There are some inspector days that are built into that, and that is a cost that's a overhead for, the contractor, but it's to make sure that someone's watching them and doing the work properly. But in addition to that, there was an established, a recommended budget, I guess I would say, for the pre-construction meeting, construction staking, field engineering, public engagement, pay estimates, and project management, all less than 16 hours or less, totaling 54 hours. When, as we discussed, this is a unit price project. So if we get to a location and in the process, say, of removing some concrete, we find that maybe an additional flag more than what we estimated was needed, someone's got to keep track of that. So the contractor's going to say, hey, what do you want me to do? This thing is cracked. So someone in the field needs to say, you know what, I think we need to take that out. Typically, when we've done this with roads, that construction engineering is, say in that case, most of the time it's done by the county. If it's a private road, we have to do that work. But even with the county, if there's a minor change, they make that change. If it's a more significant change, like, for example, maybe, hey, you know, we had an open drain here, and that's the way the job was bid, but I remember one time we encountered a gas line, and there was different things that they weren't aware that were localized, and based on the depth and the closeness to the side of the road, we think we should enclose this. It's gonna be a cost increase. But we already know how much it'll be because there are unit prices, but somebody has to be out there in the field to make low-level calls and interact with us for higher-level calls, and then also to interact with residents. Sometimes, you know, again, the public engagement. Sidewalks are a little trickier because you're in somebody's front yard doing this work, and so one person may want their tree removed, another may be really emotional about not wanting it removed, but it may very well be the tree dying or causing the damage to the sidewalk, and those are kind of some of the field issues. So the recommended budget is, their estimated effort is 54 hours. The recommended budget for that is $9,200. And they did recommend a project contingency, but as you may recall, when we approved this, I think we did include a not-to-exceed price of higher, greater, because we anticipated there could be some additional sidewalk areas identified that needed replacement. So I think we've addressed the contingency, but I would be looking for a motion to engage Wade Trim for the construction engineering of our sidewalk replacement project for construction engineering services at a cost not to exceed $9,200.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Got a motion by Mr. Tominello, support by Mr. Brado. Discussion, questions, board members?
No, just, kind of looking back at it, I sort of wish that, we'd have put the trees out separately than the concrete. You know, because you've got a concrete company doing trees, so they're hiring somebody to do that, right?
Sure, yeah, it's a
We got a
subcontract.
couple people that take our trees down, and they're pretty darn good at what they do, so.
Yeah,
I mean, these are, like, my brother had a couple large trees removed from his yard. These are really reasonable prices, especially in areas where they might have to do some
these are gonna be
really
crane jobs.
careful dropping. These are like cut and drops. These aren't, you know, axed at the bottom in timber. This is some significant work on these.
And so I see both sides, because on one hand, what I see there is a scenario where if I'm asking you to pay Dave, I'm gonna probably pay you some just to be able to pay Dave. The flip side is if I say, Brian, you're in charge, and something falls on another sidewalk and breaks it, if I'm paying Dave to chop the trees and you to do the sidewalk, you're saying, it's not my fault he hit the sidewalk and broke it, and Dave's saying, you know, so now I guess who I'm stuck, you know what I mean? So there's two sides to that, you know, right? Like imagine, when you consider the work you do, Stellantis says, hey, we want you to do all this, but we're gonna pay this one guy to do half of the work, and you're saying, well, I can't be held accountable for what he does, right? So you can see it both ways. I get your point, though.
Yeah, it's 30 grand.
It's a substantial amount. And it's a plus or minus. This is, we identified trees, you know, there may be.
But that's why you pay for a, you know, on-site inspector, so when the person that was engineering in an office, you know, missed something that actually exists in the real life, they can go, you know what, if we swing this, you know, 3 feet around, we don't have to take the tree out and everyone wins.
And Mrs. Smith is really upset about the tree, and moving the sidewalk a little bit's a heck of a lot cheaper than dropping a $3,000 tree.
Yep.
So that's where, again, some of this field work, you know, you're looking for that person that's, you know, be able to kind of communicate with all parties. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado for the construction engineering for the sidewalk to Wade Trim at a cost not to exceed $9,200. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda is item F, public comment. So we'll open the floor at this time for public comment. It can be about any subject that you wish. We do ask that you try to limit your comments to 5 minutes in length or less.
Good evening. My name is Ramona Romero. I live at 37986 Huron Point Drive. I want to address the statement that Mr. Verkes had commented at the last meeting. He indicated that I was saying something that was not possibly true. And any information I received was information I got from the newspaper. I then followed up with the notes from the township meeting, and I've got those here, and I can read those to you. Recently, there has been some discussion about dedicating and naming the garden at the Veterans Monument after Lieutenant Colonel Digger Odell, as well as adding a sculpture in his honor with plaques that would tell his story for generations to come. I have never said anything other than was in that notes or in the newspaper, which I believe is true to your statement. What I have on my form for people to sign is just the Harrison Township Board of Trustees recently approved a motion to rename the Veterans Memorial Garden outside Rosso Hall to the Lieutenant Colonel Donald Digger Odell Memorial Garden. With that said, I believe that everything I have said is factual according to your notes and the newspaper. With regards to the changes that were made over the years to our garden, yes, we've added benches and fountains, the wing for from the plane, and yes, multiple plantings. But all of those are honoring all the veterans, not any one particular one, which your change does plan on changing, making him special. You had commented that you wanted the children to know Lieutenant Colonel Odell's story, so by knowing him, they would want to join the forces. My thinking is more than that. I want everyone to honor every veteran and understand what they've all given to keep this country free. Moving on, I've had 2 meetings within this past week, one with about 25 people who agree still that it should remain only for the veterans that are on the wall, and the one today, this afternoon, for about 35 people. And we all want it to be left as is, nothing added outside to any one specific person. However, we do agree that a monument can be built for Lieutenant Colonel Odell, honoring him. But we have a few suggestions that you might want to consider. The one was to name one of our 3 parks his name. We have the Waterfront Park, which is the most popular. The one on Jefferson is usually just fishermen, so not many people would see that. And the one on South River Road is not occupied very much. So, but the one that would be the most popular with families there, kids and families knowing about Lieutenant Odell, would be that one if I had my choice. We also have several schools that their names could be changed for him, and they could put the sculpture and the plaques on the grounds of the school. And in that way, on orientation morning, the teachers could tell the kids what the school is named for, which I don't think our schools tell Lobostal how the school got its name, and they could orientate the kids to his plaques. In that way, they'd be showing the families and the children about Colonel Odell. And my one I suggested was to have a monument along North River Road where his family and friends and neighbors are close. And then as they come and go, they would see it. And then Mrs. Odell could possibly get involved in caring for it. The Osmond Garden, his family puts up the Army flag every year for him. And she might want to take care of that garden for her too. I think she'd see that much more often than going to the Veterans Garden here at the center. I believe any of those locations would honor current Lieutenant Colonel Odell very well, and I believe his family would probably be happy with any of those. Mrs. Odell herself only requests that we be respectful for her late husband, and she also said that she does not believe that he is more important than any other veteran. Every name on the wall is important to somebody, just as Colonel Odell is important to his family and friends. Many of the people of Harrison Township are again just asking, please dedicate our Veterans Garden to all veterans, not to one specific one. The daughter of one of the veterans asked me to say this, and so I'm going to quote her because I do agree with her. Don't you think it's time to reconsider your decision? Thank you for your consideration regarding this very important matter.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Board members, residents, C. William Bardell, 26-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door. Just real quick, want to remind everyone, check out Save Lake St. Clair. Press like, follow, and stay up to date on everything that's going on. And have a very wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Herman. I'm a long-term resident of Harrison Township as well. I grew up here, I went to Lance Cruz schools, and now I'm an adult with my family living in Harrison Township yet again. And I want to just state that I agree with Ms. Romero. I'd like to see the Veterans Memorial Garden stay exactly as it is. And I do believe also that Mr. Odell, or Colonel Odell, deserves a monument built for him where some more visual, more people can see it somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joe Jaworski. I've been a 13-year resident here in Harrison Township, a beautiful community I absolutely love. And I have to support Ramona Romero in having that memorial garden left the way it is. Mr. Odell would be better honored at a school, or another park. I think a school would be a great idea because for the kids that don't know history about that, they would learn about it. And it would honor him to have a plaque or a statue, as she said, on the grounds, and for parents and children alike to learn the history of him and to honor him. There are a lot of schools and places who have honored certain individuals for their contributions. And I think a school would probably be the best choice for all considered. I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Hearing none, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. I apologize if the resident misunderstood. The term I keep hearing is renaming. There is no garden name. There is no garden. We have a park. It's the Veterans Park. We've never dedicated a garden. Nothing in our minutes uses the term rename, but I consistently hear this notion of renaming the garden. The garden is not named. I would like to propose, as we progress through the fundraising, of maybe erecting a name, a plaque, a sign, clearly making it clear that this is a park for all veterans. But we want to add something to that park specifically to honor Lieutenant Colonel Odell. So we're not renaming anything. We've never used the term renaming. I looked at the minutes. I looked at the motion. None of them used the term rename. So what I'm saying is if you tell someone, hey, they're renaming something, it's a little deceiving because we've never said we're renaming something. There is no garden name. Over the years, the garden has been enhanced. We hope through the fundraising process to maybe improve the garden. We want to recognize Digger's service. And I first of all cannot do what the schools want. I would love it if the schools would recognize his service as well. I'm not in charge of the schools. What I can do is recognize him at the park for all veterans. I am not supportive of saying Because of your service, I have to honor you away from the rest of the men and women that served our country. The logical place to recognize his service is with his peers. There are many names there. We're not removing a name. We're not changing a name. The term rename is confusing. If I said to someone else, you know what, we honored Larry, but we're going to rename it after Adam. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair to Larry. We haven't named anything about the garden. We have a park, and over the years, decades, improvements have been made. We're looking to make another improvement. Honoring this resident who did a great deal of service is no better than anyone else, but it seems unrealistic to say that because of a handful of people, and I'll tell you, it's not a sea tide. I'm not getting overwhelmed by these comments. I'm getting these comments from one person and a few other people that they're interacting with. Because of that, I don't think it's fair to say he cannot be honored with the rest of the veterans that have served in our community. Furthermore, hold on, public comment is finished. Furthermore, I'm avoiding trying to make this controversial, but I have had an overwhelming number of people and leaders come to me and say, stick to what you're doing, it's the right thing to do. So from my perspective, while I hear what you're saying, we're not taking honor away from any veteran. There is no, any improvement we make to that garden that draws people there only adds to the level of interaction for people to see, wow, this many quantity of people. Hey, I recognize that name. Maybe a young man or woman goes there and said, I've got a kid by that name in my school. And they say, well, yeah, go to school, talk to that person, talk to their next door neighbor. Maybe by visiting that memorial and learning about some of the things that were done that Digger went through and the way he served our community, maybe someone learns that their very next door neighbor was a Vietnam veteran, and they interact with a gentleman in the later years of his life and express some thanks or appreciation or whatever that is. Nothing about this effort is meant to hurt anybody. It's not meant to belittle anyone. It is still a veteran's garden. It is still a veteran's park. We want to enhance it and recognize his service. There are people who are willing to pay for this. It comes at no cost. We don't have to take him out of a park that's dedicated to honoring the service of veterans. He served our country honorably, and I am not interested in saying because of that I have to not honor him with all of his peers. So, appreciate your effort. My point in what I said that I believe you're being deceiving is if you use the term rename, nobody's renaming anything. I have never said it. I just looked at the minutes. I looked at the motion. I looked at the board packet. We've never said renaming. Now, somebody who wrote an article might have used that term, but that is not in our records. We are not renaming anything. I don't know that there is a name for the garden at this point, so. Public comment is closed, so. Any other board comment?
Just one thing, I wanted to just take this time to thank Dave Axtell. I know it's been 25 years of service, and I know he's not gone yet, but his passion for the township, his years of service, and all of the things that you've done, Dave, after hours for me, and our Parks and Rec team, and just everybody in general, never went unnoticed, just so you know. So greatly appreciate it. Certainly going to miss you, and I hope your retirement is well when you finally get there. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian, I appreciate that.
I hope you're as good as retirement as you are working.
That's very well put.
Yeah, it is gonna be, this is your last board meeting, you're gonna be gone by the time we have the next one, so, congratulations, and I hope you actually do retire and don't just take
Yeah.
up 16 more jobs.
I was just gonna say, it's hard for me. I just don't see a hammock in your near future. I mean, maybe once in a while, but I don't think that's where majority of your time's gonna be, so.
Yeah, I don't wanna slow down though.
No.
Any other board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, support by Mrs. Rose. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.